My name's Glennie. I work for Save the Children. It's one of the biggest charities in the world. But what I want to talk to you about today is Lionel Ritchie. Who's heard of Lionel Ritchie? Yes, especially since he did that amazing show-storming performance at Glastonbury, I hope. I'm quite pleased because I got tickets to go and see Lionel Ritchie a couple of months ago, taking my wife, and everyone at work's been taking the mickey out of me because he's not exactly the coolest, let's face it, singer on the face of the planet. I think he's a lot cooler now after Glastonbury, so I'm very happy about that. But what I want to suggest to you is that not only is he one of the world's greatest singers, he's actually a great philosopher. And there's a particular line in one of his most famous songs, that not everyone knows that he wrote it, but one of his most famous songs that I think is incredibly modern, incredibly appropriate for us today when we're thinking about the future of our planet, the future of sustainability and inequality, as the lady earlier talked to us about. Who remembers, well, looking around the room, possibly some of you will remember Live Aid. In the 1980s, there was a huge outpouring of emotion for suffering in Africa and for famine in Africa. And we had in this country, Do They Know It's Christmas, which you will have seen done recently by One Direction and others. Well, it first happened about 30 years ago. But over in the States, Lionel Ritchie and Michael Jackson wrote a song called We Are the World. And they got a line in that, and they were talking about some of the poorest kids in the world dying of hunger. And they got a line in that song, go back and listen to it, which says, there's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. We're saving our own lives. It's an incredibly surprising thing to say, actually, when you've got a video of some of the poorest kids in the world literally dying of starvation at the time. And they said, we're saving our own lives. I'll let you mull that for a little bit, and we'll come back to Lionel in a bit. When I was 18, a little bit older perhaps than a lot of you here, younger than others, a long time ago anyway, in my life, I went to Colombia. I now have a Colombian wife, and I've got strong links to the country. When I was 18, I didn't know anything about it at all. I was brought up in a fairly boring part of London. I went to a good school, just like this one, and I had a good life. And I went to Colombia, and I worked with street children, because a friend of mine put me in touch. And it was the saddest thing I've still ever seen in my life. There were kids, not that much younger than me, sometimes 8 or 9, sometimes 13 or 14. And these were kids that were drug addicts by the time they were 8 or 9. They were sniffing glue, they were smoking marijuana. They were stealing from people on the street. And because of that, they were in great danger because people, I suppose understandably, were responding to them being thieves. And so some of them were beaten up and some of them were even killed. And what I remember most is not only that, they were deprived of basic education like you have here, decent health care, that they went to bed hungry. What I remember most is that they didn't have just the basics of love that hopefully, I hope we all have and we've all had as children. And when they came back, and when they weren't high, and when they came back from doing their various deeds on the street, they were by no means angels, as we all always say. When they came back, all they wanted really was a cuddle. And they wanted someone to tell them that they were important, special, and that they were loved. And I suppose that's the moment in my life that I began to understand what some of us now call the lottery of birth, the randomness of where we're born, this great inequality that we have in our world, where if you're lucky and you're born in a decent part of the world to a nice family, then really your life is handed to you on a plate. It certainly was in my life. But if you're unlucky and you're born in a different part of the world, and maybe to a family that doesn't have resources or for whatever reason isn't working, then you have your life taken away from you even before you've even had a chance to get it going. And that's why I've been working in the charity sector for my life, and I work now at Save the Children. But I'm not here to try and recruit you to Save the Children or Oxfam, another brilliant charity. And there are many brilliant charities, and I'm sure that many of you spend a lot of time, possibly money, supporting them, and that's a brilliant thing to do. But I'm not here to talk to you about working for charity. I'm here to talk to you, as I said, about Lionel Ritchie, which I think is one of the most important philosophers of our time. Who here has heard of the Millennium Development Goals? Some of you maybe have studied it in geography or in economics, I don't know. So the Millennium Development Goals, I'm a bit worried I'm going to run on too long here, so someone just shout out if I do. I'm not going to speak for too long. But the Millennium Development Goals were some objectives that the countries of the world all sat down in the year 2000 as we entered the new millennium, and they all agreed on some new goals for the world. Let's halve poverty in the next 15 years. Let's I think it's halve or end hunger. Certainly reduce by a great deal the amount of children and adults who go to bed hungry. Let's ensure that everyone has basic health care, everyone has primary education, including girls. Often girls are the ones that are left out in the rest of the world. I know girls generally do the best in England, but in lots of parts of the world they're still not really allowed to go to school. So all these things, and they were brilliant. And they've done a lot of good, and we've been working on them for the last 15 years. And this year, 2015, we're about to set out some new goals, and they're called the Sustainable Development Goals. Who's heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? A few people. So this is what's going to replace the Millennium Development Goals. Now, the Millennium Development Goals are brilliant, but there's a reason why the Sustainable Development Goals are better. And it all goes back to Lionel Ritchie, and I'll explain that in a sec. The Millennium Development Goals were still about, quite understandably, what can we do for you? There are poor parts of the world. We're in the rich world. What can we do for you? There was an us and them relationship. That's totally understandable because ultimately there are many more resources in our part of the world and we do need to make sure that we share them better. Nevertheless, it was a little bit patronising. It's a little bit like, we're okay, we're all right, and we'll help you to come up to our standard. But what it didn't recognise was this great thing that Lionel recognised in that song he wrote with Michael Jackson 30 years ago now, which is that when we do things to end inequality and to improve sustainability and to end poverty, we're not just saving other people's lives, we're saving our own lives. And that's, I hope, what some of the themes from these talks are going to be about when we talk about sustainability. Because these sustainable development goals don't just focus on poverty and hunger and health and education in the rest of the world. They're goals for all countries, including the rich countries. And they focus on the oceans. They focus on the atmosphere. They focus on overconsumption in the north that leads to lack of goods in the south. They focus on the unfairness in our world, not just the poverty in other parts of our world. And the whole focus of this new set of goals is to say, not it's us and them, but it's to say we're all in this together. We need to do things for the rest of the world, yes, but it's also for ourselves. Because as we all know, and you're all steeped in this, our planet simply cannot survive the way we're going at the moment. It's not us that suffer the most at the moment. It's people in the rest of the world that suffer greatly from climate change and from inequality. But it's a boomerang. And it will come back to us, and it already is. Why do you think so many thousands of migrants are taking that really heartbreaking decision to leave their homes and to make that incredibly dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean? Many, many losing their lives, and I'm very proud to say that Save the Children works with some of the children that arrive in Italy to try and help them make the best of a very difficult situation. Why is that happening? It's because of inequality. It's because in some parts of the world there are opportunities and in others there aren't. It's because of conflict. It's because of climate change. And of course it's affecting us. Just a little parenthesis. We need to be incredibly generous to people who are trying to improve their lives by migrating to Europe. It's not an easy thing to deal with. It's not just a fact of everyone can just come and that's fine. But it is. But nor can we talk badly about them. One of the things I'm most ashamed of at the moment in our country is the way that we dismiss economic migrants, as if in one paper, quite shamefully, they put cockroaches, as if these are really not human beings. They're people like us, and they're trying to do their best for themselves and their families. And even though the answers are not easy, we need to be generous and we need to be thoughtful about it. That's a little parenthesis. So I'll end by saying, on the one hand, yes, we need to continue in that struggle that Save the Children and Oxfam and many other charities around the world, and I'm sure that many of you are involved in, to reduce poverty and to deal with really the very tragic things that I saw when I was much younger than today in Colombia, and I'm sure that many of you have read about, and some of you may even have seen, the deep levels of poverty that there are in other countries. But it's time to move our philosophy on just a little bit. And it's not just about us helping them. It's about we're all in this together. It's about when we help to save other people, we're saving our own lives. Thank you very much for having me.